Well, good morning. It's a very chilly day today here at the White Swan mine. It's in the Virtue District just outside of a little town here called Baker. And maybe off in the distance there is, on that little hill right out there, is the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. The Oregon Trail actually ran down this little ridge right beside me here. There's some markers over here that are kind of dedicated to it, but it ran right through here. I think around 1870 they found gold here and started this White Swan mine. It's not a huge mine. I think they have about maybe 10,000 feet of workings in it. Had a vertical shaft that was right here. Last time I was here, it was incredibly dangerous. It wasn't open very deep. It kind of slumped in, but it was still vertical walled for about 50 feet down, about 30 feet wide. And somewhere along the way, in the last 12, 14 years since the last time I was here, evidently the BLM came in and capped it and put a big mound of dirt over the top in case it slumps in some more. But the thing was incredibly dangerous because there's a big flat spot here to drive up on where the tailing pile is. And if you didn't know that thing was there, you could just drive right off into that thing. I'm incredibly surprised nobody ever died with that thing the way it was. A motorcyclist or ATV rider comes screaming along through here and just nosedive off into that thing. The weather's not that cold, but the wind is howling today. So I'm hoping this new mic is doing the job. I'll walk you around here a little bit. It's kind of an interesting mine. There's diggings on up this hill this way, and over this way there's some more digging. I don't know if any of these old tunnels are still open or adits are still open. This one right above here used to be open. When I was a teenager, you could crawl back in it. One time I thought I found a dead body back in there. Turned out it was nothing, but you didn't really know it was there unless you went wandering around on the hillside. Well, I went wandering around on the hillside and found somebody's sunglasses and hat laying there, and just this odor coming out of that tunnel. So I went down to the local sheriff's office, and at the time back then the sheriff's office was in the basement of the courthouse, and it was kind of what you might think of maybe the Dukes of Hazzard sheriff's office being like. Kind of just a small town, you know, no security, just hey, walk in and there you are. But I went down there and I rode back out. I think I was 16. Rode back out with one of the deputies and showed him, and he crawled back in there and explored the tunnels some. And I explored them later. He didn't find anything in there, but I think they went back right after the entrance. It broke in two different directions. One leg went about 300, 400 feet back. The other one went about 200 feet. Walked up there just a few minutes ago to see if it's still open. It's not. There's one small opening just big enough for pack rats to get in. So here's this hill. The vein kind of runs up and over. I've walked up there a ways, and there's quartz all along this hillside. And I've often wondered if there's something on the other side of this hill, if they dug in from the other side or not. So we'll go wander around and see what's here. You can see it's just flat from the tailing pile. The road comes up, and just a nice big flat spot. And you know, guys on motorcycles, I'm guilty of it myself, come screaming up to stuff like this and just, you know, wee-haw. Well, right here, right in the middle of this big flat spot was about a 50-foot hole. I'm sure at one time. I think this was like an 800-foot shaft. But it had probably about 80 feet down, had caved in and then slumped in. So about the first 50 feet was this hole about 30 feet wide here. And when I pulled up here today, I was like, where in the world did the shaft go? Well, this is what happened to it. They piled a bunch of tailings, probably hauled it in here with a dump truck from down below and filled this in. Tailing pile right down there used to be considerably bigger. So I think they used those tailings and hauled them up here and covered that up. I see at some point the BLM did come up and put a danger sign in, but that's pretty well taken care of now. And that tunnel went in right up there. There's a tunnel that went back in the hillside. Like I said, it's pretty well collapsed in now, and unless you knew it was there or were paying really close attention, you'd never even know it was there. So if you've watched some of my other videos, you know, you'll see nice mountainous terrain, probably what a lot of people think of Oregon as, this beautiful mountains. Well, it goes from that to this semi-desert country very quickly. We're on the east side of the state, so the Cascade Mountain Range takes most of the moisture. You know, the west side of Oregon's extremely wet. This side's extremely dry. We get between 12 and 16 inches of rainfall a year. Unless you're up higher in the mountains, it's pretty dry here. So here's part of the mill. And this area out here, it's very arid in the summer. No water to speak of. There's a few spots where they've drilled down and put some windmills in to pump a little water out for cattle, but that's about it. A big something. Looks like a raised flower bed right at the moment. And these draws that are below these mines out here were really rich in placer gold. And after they hit water in the mines, they had water to do some placer mining below the mines. When I was a kid, that's some of my earliest memories, was down here in these draws with a pan with my dad out here panning for gold, and some of it was pretty dang rich just with a pan. Old pail. Some porcelain, some writing on it, and I wonder what that said originally. Now this here would be considered true tailings. This stuff is just sand. This would have been after they crushed it in the mill and ran it through probably amalgamation plates or amalgam plates. I don't think they did any flotation at this one. It was all free milling. You know, I've been asked a couple times, why do you call them waste rock and not tailings? And well, guys that are really hardcore into this will say that these are tailings because this was processed through the mill. This is what was left over. And like that there, that was waste rock. That was rock that come out of the mine. They didn't want it. They didn't mill it. They just dumped it. So that's waste rock. I grew up calling them all tailing piles. So I think from now on I'm just going to call them tailing piles. You can see the draw down below here. You know, it's pretty well carved out. Because after they've got some water pumping out of this mine, they mine this draw for several miles down to the confluence with another creek. This has all been mined. I'm sure they missed quite a bit on the sides because we've been in there panning a few times way back when, and pretty good gold in there. Not exactly sure what that was. Looks like some kind of firebox. Maybe a large wood stove. Throw some really big chunks of wood in. And they would have had to haul wood quite a ways to get into this thing. And right here, of course everybody's got to shoot stuff. I originally, from a distance, thought that was a boiler. It's way too thin for a boiler. Don't know what it is, but not real thick metal. Maybe a tank of some kind. Now this tailing pile right there is very much a mystery to me. I have never figured out where that came from. You know, back then they didn't haul material any further than they had to. And I can't I've yet to find a shaft or adit or anything where that would have came from. Now at this point, I'm going to stop myself blathering there for a minute and go through a couple things I should have done before I left on this little adventure, but I was in a big hurry to get out there and do something while the weather was still kind of decent. Here's a picture of that tailing pile. Right, hopefully you can see this mouse. Right there is part of that tailing pile. And this was the old mill and hoist house for the old vertical shaft. And when I got back, I discovered this, doing a little research, which I should have done before I went out there. So here's an old map of the setup. This was drawn in 1937. So right here is that old mill and the old shaft, and the tailing pile would have been right in here somewhere. So over here where that vertical shaft was that is now capped, it's right there. They evidently sank this shaft later, since they labeled this one the old shaft, and then this one's just station 1 and 2. So this shaft was not all that deep, I don't think, maybe 200 feet. And they evidently built a new mill site, which is that foundation I walked past just a few minutes ago. So just to clarify what I'm seeing out there is there was an old shaft there. Evidently it's totally either been backfilled or it's collapsed in so much that you can't even see where it was. I'm kind of wondering if the tailing pile hasn't kind of swallowed up the opening. But anyway, just to clarify what we were looking at there, to give some reference of the layout of this place. And it's kind of interesting on this also. You can see they drew the power line coming in, 22,000 volt electric line coming in with a total possible output of 400 kilowatts, and they dropped it down to 2200 volts evidently to run the operation. So, and this ran 6.5 miles over to the Virtue mine, and from there it came from Eagle Creek, I believe. By the time this was drawn, they may have changed that power routing, but the original power came from a little power plant up on Eagle Creek off to the north. One thing that caught me kind of by surprise is right here. And remember, this map was drawn in 1937. They had an antenna pole up on the hill above the mine. No idea why. Maybe some of these, maybe we had a ham in the bunch. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of odd that they actually had an antenna pole up above the mine in 1937. So anyway, back to the video. Right over here is the foundation to evidently another part of the mill. It would have been interesting to see how this was originally set up. So again, doing research after the fact, it turns out that foundation I was looking at right there would have been a storage and bunkhouse according to this. It may not have been back when they originally built this mine. They may have just used that building as storage and a bunkhouse later. But yeah, that's what that was. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is right on the hill above there was the home of Good Eats. So evidently, whoever drew this map had a little bit of humor. So evidently that was the cook shack up there. And if we flip over at this picture, you can see this is looking to the southwest. Here is the new head frame over that shaft that is now capped. You can see the power line running in. Right here, I think, would have been where that foundation is we're looking at now. This building right there. This would have been the House of Good Eats. And this is the old mill and hoist house. So the old shaft would have been right in there somewhere. So anyway, just for more reference, like I said, I should have done this before I went out there. But hey, we're getting it. So many times on these old foundations, you don't see any iron in them, but this one, they stuck quite a bit of iron in it. If you look here, it looks like whatever iron they had, old, it looks like an old rail from an ore cart. Pretty much any metal they had, they just slung it in their concrete mix to strengthen this. There are all kinds of different metal protruding off of this thing as it's crumbling apart. You can see a Mondo cable there. One thing good out here exploring this time of year, there's no snakes. I hate rattlesnakes. I'm up here on top of this tailing pile that's further to the west. You can definitely see where they mined this draw out down through there. If you look back this way, it confounds me where this tailing pile came from. I used to think it came from right down in here, but I don't think so. I think that's just I think somebody come in here and hauled some of this out and reprocessed it. I'm going to walk up on the hillside here and see what else is up here. I've done it once, like 20 years ago. I don't remember what was up there. So let's go document it. You know what one of the problems is with being out in country like this instead of heavily timbered stuff? Heavily timbered stuff, you could be 50 feet away from, you know, something, and you'll never even know it's there. Out here, you can see quite a ways and see all these little piles, so it makes you walk all over the place looking at all this. You know, most of them turn out to be nothing too interesting, like this. This was probably dug by one of the companies in the 80s. I'm almost 100% positive this was not dug by the old timers. These mining companies would come in here and dig potholes all over. And yeah, it's snowing now. You know, unfortunately, you know, I enjoy mining and I want companies to come here and mine. You know, Oregon's a hard spot to mine, but you know, when they did this kind of stuff, left all these potholes like this, when they come in and did all that testing, I think that's the reason you see these agencies requiring reclamation bonding on everything now. Pretty much, if you bring a piece of heavy equipment out, you've got to file a reclamation bond. It's because of stuff like this. And really, a company like that coming in here and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars digging, and they did ground penetrating radar stuff, and not to spend the money to take a dozer back in here and fill those holes back in. You know, that wasn't too cool. So I was over there. I'm here now. This looks like it could have been a short little adit at one time. Looks like it might actually be partially open up here. Sure enough. Dang, I wish I would have brought a shovel with me. I mean, I need to quit walking around out here. I don't know if that's going to show up, but right there, pretty good tailing pile up there. I think I'm coming up the Oregon Trail here. Yep. I'm sure most everybody's heard of the Oregon Trail. Well, here it is. You know, you think about how many wagons come through here. Kind of neat to see this history, you know, and there's spots out here that they've made people quit driving on the old trail, and it's almost a total shame they did, because the trail's getting so overgrown and cattle walking on it, it's just disappearing. But places like this where people still drive on it, it remains, and hopefully they'll wise up one of these days and just let people drive on those sections again. And this goes for miles out through here. I've rode my dirt bike through there numerous times. Kind of amazing the country they crossed to get out here. Part of me really wants to take a hike and walk over there and look at that big tailing pile over there. But I left the truck unlocked, so I don't want to walk clear over there and come back and have all my stuff gone out of the truck. Looks like we might have an open shaft right over here. Kind of open anyway. Big hole. The other spot over there that I said they filled in was about 20 feet deeper than this and a good 15 feet wider than this. I'm kind of scratching my head on what that is. Almost looks like a roadbed. Well, what this appears to be is an attempt to hold some water. You see that a lot out in this kind of country. Ranchers will go into a draw and push up a little dam and attempt to hold some water back for their cattle. And I'm assuming that's what this was, but it's bizarre because you look above here, there's no real watershed to fill it up with. You know, most of the time they'll pick further down a draw where they've got a chance to pick up some water. It's got a heck of a dump pile in here. Oh, look at all the crucibles in here. Looks like this is made in Denver, Colorado. Whole bunch of them. I mentioned the first part of the video that there was an open tunnel up above the shaft, which it's right over there. I mentioned walking around and how dangerous it is because you can see everything. Right up there, I've been out here I don't know how many times. I've never seen that tailing pile before right up there. So now I got to walk up there, which is okay because I want to see what's on the other side of that ridge anyway. And I think there's some more things to explore right down over here, I think. Oh well, I need to burn off some of the hibernation fat anyway. Hey, did I mention we're doing a couple giveaways? One, if you're not a ham, you probably won't be interested. Some keypads for some radios. But the second one, some little gold nuggets. Once we hit 1,600 subscribers, we're going to be giving those away. Here's a link to go to that video talking about them. So what do we have here? I believe this was probably dug with an excavator. And you may ask, well, how do you know it was dug with an excavator? Well, that's pretty simple. The tailings from the hole are on the sides and not down here. Very seldom do the old timers pile it up on the sides like this. They let gravity do as much work as possible. So when they were digging a hole like this, all that would wind up down here. This morning, right before I left, I think we're at 797, just almost to that 800. I'm hoping by the time I get back, we'll be at or past the 800, and we'll do a giveaway for those keypads. And then at 1600, we're going to be doing the giveaway for the gold. So here's another. This one, it has a little bit of tailings out here. So this was probably an adit at one point. Well, I cheated. I drove the truck up to the top of the hill here and put a warmer hat on. Man, this wind up here today is terrible. I'm hoping this new mic with the little fluffy thing on it, dead cat, is better than my old one. So of course I won't get to know till I get home to edit it. So if it's bad, my apologies. You know, decent little tailing pile here. I was kind of hoping this was going to be an adit, but it looks like it was a shaft. Yep, a shaft. What's left of it. Still be a pretty nasty surprise if you come bebopping along and go off into it. Wouldn't make my day. So let's go see what's on the other side of this hill. Hoping there's something interesting down here. Worth freezing my hands over. So I did walk down on the other side of that hill. There was quite a few little prospect holes. A couple things I just wanted to show you before we end this video is here on Google Earth, if you look right there, this is from 2005, that you can clearly see that shaft. You know, my pickup's parked right about here, and you can clearly see that shaft was open then. 2006 image was terrible. Jump to 2011, you can pretty clearly see they, at that point, had covered the shaft up. And 2013, you can definitely tell it's been covered up. We'll go to the latest photo. So here was that shaft that I was just at that's collapsed in. And you can see there's all kinds of prospects over on this side of the hill. There's absolutely no sign of quartz on this hill at all. This turns to basalt. This whole hillside is just basalt. Really no sign of any quartz on it at all. Up in this general area there is some quartz starting to show back up again. Right here was an old adit that's collapsed, and I got to looking at this map again. Here, right here is that shaft I was just standing at, and I believe that adit that I saw was right here. Yeah, it's an old tunnel that went in, and evidently there was a cabin there at one time, so that's kind of interesting. So that's about all that was on the other side of the hill there. Nothing major to report. So that's going to about wrap it up for today. I am going to go look at some other mines today. They'll be on future videos. So again, thank you all for subscribing. Remember, check out our giveaways. Like us, subscribe, heck, even share. And we always appreciate some comments down below. So I'm going to hike back up out of here, and we'll catch you guys on the next one, okay?